I'm going to be talking about 5 most important things that parents need to know in order to prevent or respond to sexual abuse with your kids. That's what I'm going to talk about in just a minute. So if you want to, I see there's like 25 people on here right now. If you would share this right now and just hit share at the bottom and leave lots of hearts and love, because I'm out of bed after my first round of chemo and anyway, yes. If you could share it, just click share and post this over onto your page. That would be super amazing. My voice and my energy though today is so much better than it has been. And yes, it's chipper and cool outside, so I'm keeping myself going here. But yeah, I'm not half dead like I was last Tuesday when I did a live video with my thoughts. So I'm sure I will be half dead again, and I will share more about the journey because I'm committed to being really vulnerable and open through this journey with everyone, with each of you, just like I've been about other things in the past. And I want to stay that way because I think that's how we heal, and I think that's how we help others heal. The topic for today is the 5 most important things that parents need to know to help prevent sexual abuse among your kids. Hit share, send it around, tell everyone you know, email it to another parent who needs to know, send it to your kids' church school teachers, send it to your kids, their classes at church, send it to your youth pastor, send it to other parents, your school groups, PTA groups, homeschool groups, whatever it is, because this is stuff we all need to know. Number 1, most important things, 5 most important things that you need to know as a parent to help prevent your child from sexual abuse. Number 1, start with yourself. Educate yourself, because if you saw the bullying and the toxic reality, the toxic sexuality of so many things that are normal, considered normal, on Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, all of these places, and the other places that your little kids and your tweens and your teens are hanging out, you'd be horrified. Most parents don't hang out in all those places. And thank you, Trinette, I see. Oh, thank you for your prayers. And Adrian, I really appreciate you guys. Anyway, so yeah, most parents, we don't hang out where our kids are hanging out online. And that is a mistake. If you are not hanging out where your kids are hanging out, if you don't know what apps your kids are using, if you're not using apps like Bark and others that help you make sure that your kids' phones and tablets and laptops and the family computer are fully filtered and tracking every click everywhere, you will not know what online world your kids are living in. It's as simple as that. Today's world is divided into 2 very fractured and distinct packages: the real life world and the digital matrix. And your kids live, if they have devices, live in the digital matrix, whether you like it or not, whether you think they do or not. They're there. The rest of the things you see as you interact with your kids around the dinner table or back and forth from school, you don't know what's going on in their digital matrix world because that's not where you're hanging out. So tip number 1 out of the top 5 things that you need to know in order to prevent your child from sexual abuse is to educate yourself, know what apps they're using, review it, talk about your kids, about all those things with your kids, sit with your kids, look through everything. And the wind noise is making it hard to hear. I'm sorry. I don't know what I can do about that. Is this any better? And if you don't dive into the world that they're living in, you're going to stay locked out of it. So that's just the simple fact. Step number 1, educate yourself on where your kids are and what they're looking at, and make sure that you have filters on everything. Child lock, parental controls on everything. Number two, porn is everywhere. And as far as I am concerned, in the line of work that I do, all porn is abuse and all porn is dangerous for kids. There is no level of porn that is appropriate for children ever in your household. Here's the thing. If your kids have electronics, if your kids have access to the internet, or they have friends who have access to the internet, and they are age 7 or 8 or older, they have probably already been exposed to hardcore porn. I'm going to say that again. If your kids are 8 years old or older, and they have any access to the internet, or they have friends who have phones or tablets or the internet, they've probably already seen straight up porn. And here's the thing. Even if they haven't seen straight up porn yet, they have friends and classmates, schoolmates who have, and who know what is out there, and whose parents are not watching them. Don't question it. Count on it. Today's porn is not pinup pics. It's not calendar girls. It's not what you remember finding in your uncle's bathroom counter or under his sink or whatever when you were a kid. Today's porn is not what you remember from childhood exposure. It is filled with violence, rape, incest, child abuse, and assault. There is nothing enriching about today's porn on any level. I'm not saying there ever was. I'm just saying today, zero. It is a cesspool. This is your kid's sex education. And if you are not talking about sex at home, if you are not talking about all the uncomfortable taboo subjects, we're going to talk about that in a minute in another point, your kids are getting a sex education, and they're getting it from porn. So they will never tell you this stuff, especially if your family's unspoken rules are that we don't talk about that stuff. They're never going to tell you. You think that your kids would tell you if they saw something horrified. They're not going to, because you're not already talking to them about sex, because you're not already teaching them about body and consent and abuse and things that are wrong, and you're not openly talking about these kind of topics. So if you don't talk about it, and your kids have access to the internet anywhere at anyone's house, or friends who have access to the internet on devices anywhere at anyone's house, you are going to be raising the next generations of porn addicts, abusers, and rape victims. That's where the porn culture is leading. It's so easy to sit back and just believe and hope and bury our heads in the sand that everything's gonna be okay as long as we don't talk about it. It isn't. So step number 2 for keeping your kids really safe from sexual abuse is to not let them get online, unfiltered, unsupervised, or around other people's kids who are unfiltered and unsupervised. It's going to happen. In today's world, it is not a question of whether or not you can protect your children from porn exposure and hardcore toxic sexuality exposure. It is only a question of, can you delay it long enough to give them enough tools to be able to handle it so that it doesn't become a traumatic exposure that is addictive to them. That's the choice that you have today as parents. Yes, even Christian parents. Yes, even if your kids are in a fabulous Christian school. Yes, even if they go to a magnet school. Yes, even if they go to a charter school. And yes, even if you live out in the country and you homeschool. Because every kid knows someone somewhere who's watching something else. And so we have to be involved and talk about the taboo subjects. Number 3. If your child brings something up or asks a question about their body, about their health, about someone else's body, about marriage, about sexuality, about physical body parts, about something they saw, about a billboard, about a big, huge, larger-than-life poster in the mall, don't overreact. Don't go crazy if a child shares something you don't expect. And don't act horrified that they've just shared something that you find shocking that they know. If a child tentatively starts sharing something or drops some hints about something or asks a question about something, you stay calm. Listen, ask questions, and believe them. If they say something that you think sounds shocking about someone that in your mind would never do that kind of thing, listen to your kid, because kids don't make stuff like that up. Listen to your child. And even if you hear something that seems off the wall, or they ask a question, keep asking more questions. Ask a question behind the question. Ask them another question. Ask them why they think that. Ask them where they heard that. Keep a neutral tone of voice. And this can be really hard if you have culturally been taught to shut up and don't talk about the taboo subjects. But you know what? If you act horrified and you're like, oh, where'd you hear that? You know what? Your kid may never open up to you again. It's not worth the risk. Number 4, start very young with proper body names, proper body consent, and basic principles of safe and unsafe touch. I mean, as young as age 2, young as age 1. And this can be taught without ever saying anything about sex at such a young age. You can say, may I give you a hug? Oh, would you rather shake my hand? Oh, how about a high five? You can say, if anyone ever touches you and it makes you feel uncomfortable, you can say no. Your body belongs to you. Your kids don't have to hug grandma. They don't have to hug the person that makes them uncomfortable at church. They don't have to let the creepy uncle kiss them just because that's the family convention. Teach them that they can say no and still be polite. You can say, no, thank you, may I shake your hand? You can say, I don't feel like a hug right now. How about a high five? You can teach your kids all kinds of things that have to do with consent without actually talking about sex. Teach them to expect that their no will be respected. Teach your sons that when anyone else says no, or no thank you, or or stop, or quit it, or go away, or get out of my face, whatever it is. I know, kids can get melodramatic. I have some melodramatic ones. Teach your sons that no is no. No does not mean try harder. No does not mean go for it again. No does not mean try to change her mind. No does not mean be persuasive. No means shut up and back off because she just gave you a boundary, or he. And for girls, teach girls that when they say they have the right to expect for it to be respected. They have the right, every right, to expect other people to respect their space. And every time that you invade your child's space, you're teaching them that doing what they're told by someone in power over them is more important than listening to their instincts. Now, Bella just said something. When my kids met you and you asked if you could shake their hand, they were floored and said, I really liked that she asked. I do that on purpose. When I meet someone's child, I'll get down on their eye contact level and I'll say, may I shake your hand? Would you like to give me a high five? And you know why I do that? Because I want them to know that they are free to tell me no. If they're not comfortable with me, that's okay. They can take their time to warm up to me. Perfectly fine. Every child and every adult needs to know that they have that right and that they can always drop down to something else and still be polite. It doesn't mean that they have to be disrespectful. They can offer what they are comfortable with. You can teach this to very, very little children by playing just like tickle games. Okay, you're wrestling, roughhousing with your 3-year-old in the floor. Your 3-year-old starts laughing and laughing and laughing, and they say, stop! And you go, and you wait until they say, again! And you don't come back into the game until they say again. Have them do that with each other. It's really simple, but you're teaching them consent and the expectation of their consent being respected. Number 5, last point for today. Educate before something happens. So often, we're trying to keep our kids innocent, we're trying to keep them sheltered, and we think that the way to do that is to never talk about sex and never talk about abuse and never say anything at all. That's not true. I can't tell you how many times I've had moms come to me and say, I wish I had known this before, because when I finally got around to thinking my kids were old enough, and I finally got to the point of giving them books like Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. By the way, I'm going to link in the notes under this. I will link to my blog post with book reviews and recommendations for the best books to have these great conversations with your kids. I'm going to link to those. But so I remember this one parent I was talking to, and I've heard this story 100 different times in 100 different ways. She says, when I finally got to where I thought my kids were old enough, I found out I was a year and a half too late, because my child had already been exposed to hardcore porn at the ice skating rink, or at a friend's house, or on a play date, or in the back pew of church while they were sitting with some friends during the church service. Every single time, the parents wished so badly that they had talked to their children sooner about these things. We can talk to our children and educate them about their bodies, about healthy sexuality, and about preventing sexual abuse, with these tough topics without ruining their innocence. We are giving them tools to step away, to know what to do when they are guaranteed to come into awkward situations. It is our duty as parents to educate our children before the world steps in, or other kids, or a creepy family member steps in and does it for us. An informed child is a well-armed child. A child who knows that they are free to come and talk to their parents about absolutely anything is a child who will come and tell you if something has happened. I remember one time, very shortly after I became a single parent, I was really overwhelmed. I was packing up. Our lease was ending. I had no job. We were going to be homeless for the next few months. And a church member just offered to take my kids for a couple of hours. And it was the one time that I allowed them to do that. Someone to do that. I didn't do that very often. And so I gave my kids the talk again. They were 4 and 5 before they went off with a church member. And even though it was just for 90 minutes, I still gave them that talk. And they're 4 and 5, and they're like, Mom, we know this stuff already. Why are you telling us this again? I'm I'm telling you it again because it's important. They come back. And I'm trying to be gentle, and I said, hey, so how'd you have fun? What'd you do? Where'd you go? Did you eat something? And my quirky little son walks over to the refrigerator, swings the door wide open like he's a 16-year-old teenager. He wasn't even 6 yet. He might have been 6. No, he wasn't even 6 yet. Swings the door open, and he says, Mom, we had a great time. Nothing bad happened, and there was no body touchment. And I burst out laughing because he knew exactly where I was headed with my line of questioning, and I had not even gotten there yet. But that was awesome because he knew that I wanted him to be safe. He knew to look out for his sister, and he knew that I was going to ask when he got back if he had been okay and if he had ever had anything that made him feel uncomfortable. And he knew that he could tell me. That's the kind of relationship that you want to have with your kids. And if you don't have that kind of relationship with your kids, today is the time to start. I saw some questions in the comments below. I will totally go back and drop some answers into that. I'm going to cut this, all the fluff out of this, and then I'm going to post it over on YouTube. I'll share that on YouTube. I'm also going to post it, if you haven't seen my brand new website, which granted has gotten a little bit derailed because of, chemo and cancer and all that crazy. But it's still there. I have Systems of Love and Honor, a guide to recognizing safe relationships, on my new website at http://wilderness2wild.com. www.wilderness2wild.com. I have Systems of Love and Honor. It's an ebook, super low cost ebook download. I have Systems of Abuse. It's also an ebook, and I have the Abuse Advocacy Guide. And that one is bigger than the other two. That is also available for ebook download at www.wilderness2wild.com. Also have the brand new co-write book called Safe Churches: Responding to Abuse in the Faith Community. It is a training manual for church leaders and parents on how to respond to and recognize abuse in the faith community. The link to that book on Amazon is also on my website, www. It has to have the www. I have got to get my IT guy to fix that. www.wilderness2wild.com. And anyway, I think that just used up all my energy for today. So I'm going to go take a nap. And you know what? All your prayers, your messages, they warm my heart when I have been having really rough days and crying into my pillow. I have read your messages and your thoughts. Thank you so much for being with me on this journey. And if you love this video, please share it, pass it on, and help other parents get this material, because we have got to keep our kids safe. Love you all. Mwah.